gonna go turn my camera off. Just a heads up,
Yeah, I'll turn mine off too.
like I normally do.
I don't want people watching me eat.
Welcome, week 4. We're looking at quarterbacks and running backs tonight. FanDuel, DraftKings, Daily Fantasy. Alex, how'd you do?
Did well. I had my first 4-0 week this year. It was about time.
Oh, nice. There you go.
Julio Jones carries me in all those teams.
That's right. We spoke on Thursday. You said you had Julio and Matt Ryan, right?
Yeah, I have Julio in all 4, and I have all but one of them have also Matt Ryan and Matt Bryant on both of them. All 3 of them.
Well, there you go. So, basically, if you had lost last week at all, then we'd have a problem.
I came close, actually. One of them.
Uh-oh.
I barely eked it out with Jay Cutler against my Jets. I won by 1.5 points.
Wow. You can thank the refs for that. I didn't watch the whole game, but I heard the refs were pretty brutal.
Well, I had Demarius and Randall Cobb in that league, so I'm pretty happy that I eked it out.
Jeez. Oh, man. Great on paper, but
I know.
not this week in reality. But we'll dive right in. Let's go into the quarterbacks. First value pick on quarterback is Phillip Rivers. As we spoke about before the show, you love pretty much anybody against Jacksonville this week. I think that kind of goes without saying. He's going for 7,700 in DraftKings, 8,400 in FanDuel, so we like him a bit more in DraftKings than FanDuel. He's more expensive. He's one of the higher tiers, I think, in FanDuel versus what he is in DraftKings. Tell me why you like him so much. You think he can repeat what Andrew Luck did this week?
I don't know if he'll repeat it, but I just think Jacksonville's defense is so porous that he's just going to be able to throw for a lot of yards early. I don't know if I would play him at this price just because I think they're going to be in the lead so quickly. I think they're going to be in the lead so quickly because they're going to get a pick six on Bortles pretty early, and they're just going to be up, and they're just going to wind up running the ball most of the day. I think he'll still throw for over 250 yards, maybe have 2 scores, but you're banking on a lot with Rivers to really wind up being in a closer game to get those yards that you need.
So, feedback on that, I thought the same with Luck last week, right? It would be kind of risky to play him because they were going to go up early and hopefully hold that lead. And that's what they did, but they went up early, and he still threw for 300 plus and 3 TDs, so you never know. But with San Diego, I think you're right. They're more of a running team, but they lost Danny Woodhead at Buffalo. He's pretty much gone for the season, they're saying. So you're sitting there with someone who we're going to touch on a little later, Donald Brown, and you're hoping that Donald Brown stays. I mean, how are you going to play that, right? I mean, you can't give Donald Brown the rock 30 times like we saw this past week. He'll have a Matt Asiata type of game.
I think the difference between Rivers and Luck from last week to this week is that 2 of Luck's touchdowns were on short plays. One was to Bradshaw, and one was to Dwayne Allen, where he kind of just got in the end zone. Without Woodhead, and especially without Matthews, I don't really think that's the way that offense is going to run, and I think they're going to try to either pound the rock or he's going to wind up throwing it in. But I think that they're going to wind up pounding it in more so than they are going to throw it.
Okay, so I can see your risk there with Phillip Rivers, but
I'm not saying he's going to have a bad week at all. Just at that price, with that kind of volatility,
at that price, you can find someone that you're more comfortable with.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, I'm on board with that. Someone who I think you're more comfortable with already is Ben Roethlisberger. Like we said, we love anybody who plays the Jags, and I think we also love anybody that plays the Bucs right now. Looking at that defense and what Matt Ryan and the Falcons did to him, Ben Roethlisberger's going for only 6,900 in DraftKings, going for 7,700 in FanDuel. So he's again, I think, more of what you're looking for in DraftKings, but still that value is there. I know you agree, but tell me what you really think you're going to get out of Ben this week.
I think he's going to be good this week just because how well he played last week against a much, much better defense. He had the 2 touchdowns. He went 22 of 30. I know he didn't have a lot of yardage, but he looked good. He looked on the same page with his receivers, and Also, I kind of think he had his third touchdown when Wheaton kind of stepped out of bounds at the end of the during the game on Sunday night.
Right.
But he looked good. He looked like he was sharp. He was throwing accurate passes. He was getting everybody involved. And if that running attack is going to keep doing things like that, he's going to get a lot of extra points off play action, and he's going to get a lot of points just from people stacking the box.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was a trap game against Carolina, I think. For Carolina, it was a trap game. The Steelers had that extra time because they played the prior Thursday. Carolina coming off a big win over Detroit. So I'm hoping Ben can carry that momentum into Tampa Bay or against Tampa Bay, because I'm pretty sure he's going to be my starting quarterback this week as well.
Yeah, my only issue is that they might pull him in the fourth quarter like Ryan got pulled last week. But other than that, they're going to score a lot of points against Tampa Bay's defense.
You still get plenty. Yeah, I mean, you still get plenty of points from somebody in that realm. But we'll see if we can find somebody else in the next few guys that we list off. The next guy, Tony Romo, going against the New Orleans defense, 6,700 in DraftKings, 7,500 in FanDuel. Tell me what you like about Romo this week.
I like that he's at home more so than anything. He usually plays better at home, and I think he's starting to get a little bit healthier. He had a much better game last week than he did the 2 weeks prior. He's still a QB1 as long as he's got his weapons on the field and he can start throwing the ball and being protected by that O-line. To have a QB1 at that kind of price, he's still one of those guys that you have to take a chance on. At that low of a price, like that's the difference I think between Rivers and Romo, is that Rivers' price is kind of like a mid-tier quarterback one, and Romo is still at that kind of high-end quarterback 2 number, and I just feel like Romo is going to wind up with the better numbers anyway.
And you think that plays into, Rob Ryan is their former defensive coordinator. Are they going to be able to exploit that?
I think in some ways, I think the biggest thing about it is that the Dallas defense is so bad and Breeze has been so off that they're going to have a monster day through the air, and it's going to force Romo to throw the ball and not hand it off to DeMarco as much as they have been this season.
Yeah, I really expected, not to sidebar, but I really expected more out of Breeze this past week when, they're coming home against the Vikings defense that's okay but not great. It was their home opener. I mean, I just expected them to light it up. I started Breeze and Graham in every DFS league I had, and didn't really pay off as I wanted to. But anyway, I'll bring it back to topic here. Back to value QBs. Mike Glennon. So let's take the opposite of our Ben Roethlisberger pick. You're looking at Glennon, who's going to start from McCown. He's got 3 targets in Vincent Jackson, Safarian Jenkins, and Mike Evans that are all 6'5" and above. Doug Martin's healthy and coming back, we're hearing. He's going for 5,500 in FanDuel, 5,900 in DraftKings. Tell me, I don't think you like Mike Glennon all that much, so tell me why you don't like him at this price.
I just don't like him because I don't think he's going to do much of anything, and you don't want to have a guy that's going to do much of nothing even if he's cheap. You can fill your team with as many punt plays and cheap guys as you want, but you still need those cheap guys to put up points for you, and I don't think Glennon is one of those guys that's going to do it, especially against an improving Pittsburgh defense, as we saw against Carolina. And also, one of the biggest things is Vincent Jackson has a small fracture in his hand. I know he's going to keep playing, and they said that it's not really technically an issue, but that's something that I would definitely be worried about throwing the ball at Vincent Jackson. Yeah,
I mean, you can't. If it were a fracture somewhere else, or a bruise, or contusion somewhere other than his hands, I think I'd be more comfortable, or more confident in him being a target. But as you said, I mean, he's a receiver. He uses his hands all day. That's his job. It's going to be tough for you to really rely on him, or for Glennon to really rely on Vincent Jackson this week. I think in the upcoming weeks, we're going to keep Glennon on this list because Jeff Tedford's coming back to call plays for Tampa, and I think that Tampa offense starts to pick up the tempo, get a little bit better as weeks go on, and we're going to see them put up some good points. So keep maybe Mike Glennon off of your roster this week, but keep an eye on him for future weeks. We're going to bring him up in the podcast coming up in future weeks is my prediction because of that play call changing and their conservative nature changing quite a bit. So just my opinion, keep an eye on that going forward.
Right, and also, if you remember during preseason when Dwayne Bowe hurt his finger, and he looked like he couldn't catch anything. Now that he's back, I saw last week he was catching the ball pretty well. It didn't seem like it was bothering anymore. I think Glennon in a couple weeks when Vincent Jackson maybe has that fracture heal and it's a little less painful for him, then yeah, he's probably a better play.
Yeah. Next QB. We thought he wasn't going to start this season, right, according to his coaching staff, but now that Chad Henne sucks so bad, they brought him in second half of last game, and they're giving him the starting job, Blake Bortles. He's going up against San Diego this week, looking at 5,800 in DraftKings, 6,500 in FanDuel. So tell me why you like Blake Bortles this week.
I just love Blake Bortles in general. I just remember seeing him during that bowl game last year and thinking there's no reason this guy shouldn't be the top quarterback taken in the draft. He's got a rocket arm. He looked great in the preseason. He looked a little shaky last week, but, I mean, in your debut, you're going to look a little shaky. You're going to make some bad throws. But after, I think he only played, a little bit more than a half, and he had over 200 yards in the 2 scores.
Yeah.
Jacksonville's going to be in that position a lot this year, where they're down and they're going to have to throw the ball a lot. I think he's going to be able to I personally think he's going to go over 300 yards this week, just because how quickly they're going to be down. But my only reservation, especially about this week, is that San Diego likes to shorten the game, which is going to limit his ability to throw the ball as much as we would like him to.
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't see the value in him this week just because you don't know what you're getting from him yet. I think that in last week, for example, if he was the starter at the beginning of last week against Indy, you knew it was going to be a high-scoring game, at least for Indy, so you knew Jacksonville was going to have to catch up. This game is a little bit more confusing. We don't know what San Diego is going to do. But not only that, Bortles, like you said, looked really great on the combine, looked really great, in pro days. I haven't seen him play a game, a meaningful game yet or meaningful game time. So me personally, I'm staying away from him, but that's just for this week. I think he's going to have more opportunities later on in the year to impress us and to start us off.
Right. He's somebody that I can feel comfortable starting later on. But yeah. It's just my biggest concern is the fact that San Diego loves to shorten games, and that's just really going to limit his passing opportunities.
Absolutely. So in talking about the combine, we're going to bring up another rookie quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater. Took over the job due to injury to Matt Castle, not just overall suckiness, but he broke several bones in his foot. So Bridgewater comes in, does okay in his pro debut. Very rough environment going into New Orleans. He goes against Atlanta this week, 5,700 in DraftKings, 5,900 in FanDuel. So the lowest end of QB that you can really find. And going up against a defense that, other than against Tampa Bay, hasn't been that great. So tell me why you like Bridgewater this week. You think he can actually provide value, or is he just like Bortles where we think we're going to have to wait to see what we actually have here?
I think he's going to be more like Bortles. I think people are underestimating the Falcons' defense. They looked really good last week against McCown and Glennon. I think they're starting to hit their stride a little bit, and their offense is clicking. That first week, then they looked really bad against New Orleans. They're playing New Orleans, and then who did they play week 2? That was the Cincinnati game.
That was the Bengals.
Yeah, Cincinnati has a very good offense too. There's just no firepower in Minnesota right now. I know they have Cordarrelle Patterson, but I don't think Bridgewater's on the same page with Jennings yet. I don't think in terms of throwing the ball he's on the same page with Cordarrelle, and he'll run the ball. And without Rudolph and obviously no Adrian Peterson, that is an offense that I just want to avoid at all costs right now until I see some improvement.
So if I am stacking up at my other positions and I absolutely have to go cheapest of the cheap at quarterback, you're looking at
I would rather take Bortles.
You'd rather take Bortles?
Yeah.
See, I think I'd go Bridgewater there just because he has the combination of Rudolph, Jennings, and Patterson.
Well, Rudolph's out. Rudolph's out for 6 weeks.
Oh, geez, good point.
Yeah.
So yeah, that pretty much evens the playing field. Then I think they both have struggles at the skill positions. Like we said, AP's gone. Asiata isn't the same guy. Not that he's terrible, but he's not the same guy, and that's just obvious. So yeah, okay. With Rudolph out, good point.
I like Bortles' weapons
I'd
a
have
little
to
more.
lean back to Bortles.
Yeah, I
Yep.
like Bortles' weapons a little bit more. Allen Robinson's starting to play a little better. I know Marquise Lee is out, but Cecil Shorts is back, and Cecil Shorts is the best receiving option.
He's actually legit, yeah.
And also Allen Hurns. I mean, he had another touchdown catch last week. I don't really trust him as a guy with my fantasy team, but he's a guy that Bortles connected with a lot in the preseason, and he's another person to catch the ball in that offense.
Yep, I can understand that. I hold a grudge because I started Marquise Lee week 1, and I was trying to sneak in some cheap there, and of course Hearns goes off, catches those 2 touchdown passes. But
Of course,
we can vent more about receivers the next podcast. That's it for our value picks here. So again, I'll list them off. We got Phillip Rivers, Rivers against Jacksonville, Roethlisberger against Tampa Bay this week, Romo against New Orleans, Glennon against Pittsburgh, Bortles against San Diego, and Bridgewater against Atlanta. That was going most expensive to least expensive this week, looking at value picks for the quarterback position. Moving on to running backs, our first one will be funny that he's not technically a starting running back, but he provides a lot of value and probably more value than the starting running back out there. The Colts running back Ahmad Bradshaw going up against Tennessee this week, going for only $5,800 in DraftKings, only $6,100 in FanDuel. He seems to find the end zone frequently, especially more than Trent Richardson. So tell me, Alex, what do you think about Ahmad this week?
I like Ahmad. I think that Titans defense is a little bit overrated from where they were this preseason. He's obviously the better back between him and Trent Richardson. I think it's only a matter of time before he's quote-unquote the starter. But for now, he's getting in on every passing down and he's playing a lot more in the red zone than Richardson. So he's obviously a good bet to get in the end zone. And with that high-powered offense, I would take it. Chuck could have at least a touchdown and at least 80 yards this week with a couple of receptions, which is nice for DraftKings.
Yeah, I mean, as we say, we always have to put in the reminder their DraftKings full point PPR, so anybody that can catch passes definitely increases their value. Looking at our next running back value pick, Eddie Lacy. He's a guy who you've got to buy low on right now, and I don't know if his value will get this low again in DraftKings. I think DraftKings tried to overcompensate here. $5,600 in DraftKings. He's still going for $8,000 in FanDuel. I think FanDuel is more of an accurate measure of his value right now. He went up against 3 of the toughest defensive lines in the league in Seattle, and then the Jets, and then Detroit. I mean, you just can't you can't not look at that stat line, right?
Of course.
$5,600 on DraftKings. For me, it's a steal. I mean, you have to play him going against Chicago, who's one of the worst run defenses in the league.
Exactly. That's the point, is that he went from going against the Seahawks, the Jets, and the Lions, and now he gets the Bears, who are notoriously bad against the run. This is the lowest you will ever see Eddie Lacy being valued on DraftKings. He will still chip in with a couple catches, maybe 1 or 2 here and there, and he's gonna gash the Bears, because I think this is gonna be a highly explosive game, and they're gonna get Eddie Lacy going early.
Okay, let me take a pause for the cause here. Pete joined us.
What's up, Pete?
Hey guys, I didn't see a link. Sorry, otherwise I would have been here earlier.
No worries.
I don't know what's going on with your email, man. I don't get it.
It's not in my social. It's not in my inbox. It's not anywhere.
Yeah, it makes no sense. I sent it to you, Kurt, the whole gang again. But from now on, what I'll do is I'll just copy and paste the link into an email and just flat out send it to you.
Yeah, I think that's the best bet.
Yeah. Here we are. Is that Karaganis? Let me make sure that's the email that I normally send it to. Give me 1 sec.
Take your time. I need to finish eating. I don't want to eat while I'm talking.
Yeah, no problem.
How far in are we? Did we just do?
We did quarterbacks, and we just started running backs.
Oh, okay. You guys want to just finish a duo since you started that way, or?
No, man.
No.
Come on in. We
Come
just
join the
talked
party.
I was just thinking for continuity, but that's fine.
No. Stop it.
No, Mark will just go, and Pete's finally joining us, and then go right to you.
Done. We'll do that. So let's see. Do you still have the link to that DFS file, that Excel file?
I'm sure I do somewhere, yeah.
Or do you want me to give you names again?
Yeah, just give me names. I'll talk about them.
All right. I'll put them into the chat if you give me a couple minutes here.
Sure.
So we just wrapped up Lacey. So what I'll do is bring you in and you can chat about Lacey.
Okay.
And then
By the way, how did we do last week with our picks? Anybody look?
No, I don't have the login. I don't know what the lineup was that Kurt
No, I
put
mean
in.
just with the guys that we were on the show.
Oh, the guys that we were picking in the show?
Bro, I didn't even think about that.
We should probably do some sort of
I did not
recap or look back, with the guys that we suggest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, we don't have to do anything big or anything, but if there's one name in particular that we were miserable on, or one name in particular that we did great on, like one guy I remember is I wanted to include Martellus Bennett in last week's show. I was like, this is a good buy.
Yeah, he went off, man. I remember that. I was thinking of you.
Well, they're lining him up as a receiver. He's basically playing a receiver role. So they got a 6'6" receiver going up against
him. That's all I was thinking about was your voice haunting my dreams when he kept going for touchdowns against my defense last night.
Yeah. But I mean, that's what we should look at is who did we say no, don't play and who did we say play.
Yep.
And honestly, I don't remember. Other than that was the only one that came to my mind that we talked about. I think we also said to play Kirk Cousins, and he went off.
Off.
Yes.
He went off.
Yeah. So these are things that we should remember because if we're making good calls like that, if we're saying play Cousins and we're saying spend the money on Bennett and we're getting it right, we should probably talk about that.
Yeah, we should give ourselves credit where credit's due.
Yeah. And conversely, if we totally fuck up,
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I definitely hold each other accountable. I agree.
Who are the cheap tight ends that we talked about? I feel like we got a couple of those right too, the really cheap ones.
Kelsey.
Are you saying you don't listen to the podcast?
I actually do. I just don't remember. I have 9 fantasy teams, man. Juggling all the names is insane. Yeah.
Kelsey. I know we talked about Kelsey again.
Kelsey was one of them. You definitely brought up Bennett. We talked about Donnell, Ertz.
Donnell had a terrible week.
Ertz had a terrible week. Yeah, Donnell and Ertz both blew it.
Niles Paul, I think.
Niles Paul. We talked about him. Yep. Or that might have been it. We didn't talk about too many tight ends.
Yeah, we kind of got this short on the tight ends. We had a lot of wide receivers last week.
But
anyway, that's just something to think about. If we have a list of names somewhere that we talk about on each show, or maybe we should keep a list of names.
Yeah, we should probably start keeping a list because I overwrite it every week with my projections.
You could do, Mark?
I can probably stop doing that.
You could just make a separate page and just copy and paste the names we have that we're talking about right now and just do week 1, week 2, week 3, and just copy paste, put it in a separate tab, and then we can keep track of it all year.
Probably what I'll end up doing is making a projections week whatever page so I can.
Then that's not a lot of extra work for you, and you can just look at it and be like, oh, he scored this many points. Okay.
Yeah,
I like that idea. I like that idea a lot.
So there we go. Projections week 4. All right. So if we're good to go.
Can we switch a couple of names on the list here? Can I take Asiata and I'll give Sankey to Alex?
Done.
And then otherwise, I think we're good.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about Asiata. I hate Asiata.
I want to talk about him.
All right, done. All right.
Do you want to flip Alfred for Dougie Fresh?
You want Doug Martin?
Yeah, kinda.
Yeah, I'll take Alfred Morris.
Dude, would you get healthy?
It's ridiculous. It's been like 2 weeks. You know what though? This is the best I've felt in like 2 weeks. There was this big virus going around the Midwest, like a bunch of school kids got it, and since I teach, of course, I got it also.
Oh.
Yeah.
Stop hanging around school kids.
Yeah, dude.
Oh, what are you gonna do? My job. It was like it was so big. It was even on CNN. Like kids were getting hospitalized for this.
Jesus.
And then here you are toughing it out for the podcast.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually totally fine except for this cough, which I can't get rid of.
Yeah, maybe Zycam that shit. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. Making a note.
I got cough syrup with codeine.
That's
Yes.
so fun.
Yeah.
There you go. Don't teach on that shit.
No worries. I think of some funny reason why I was late. what was I doing? I was taping Jamal Charles' ankle. That's what I was doing.
All right, here we go. We'll kick it off now. All right, and we're joined by the Greek fantasy genius, Pete the Greek. Pete, tell me what you think about Eddie Lacy this week. Like we were saying earlier, he went up against 3 very tough D-lines this year so far. Going up against the Bears now, DraftKings discounted him down to $5,600. I think everybody has to play him this week.
Yeah, DraftKings is really progressive with the prices as far as taking guys down who are performing poorly. So I like him at that price. I'm probably not using him on FanDuel. I think he's still too high on FanDuel, but on DraftKings, I'm probably using him. The Bears' defense looked pretty good against the Jets. That's the Jets. I think I like Lacy a lot this week. And even though they played well against New York, Chris Ivory, who runs hard like Lacy, still had a wonderful week. I mean, he still he didn't put up a ton of fantasy points, but his yards per carry was around 4.5. He caught a few balls for about 50-some yards. So I like Lacy and FanDuel. The Bears' defense not that great. Something to be concerned about, though, if you're a Lacy owner in a regular league, the Packers' offensive line has not looked good. And the Packers as a whole have not looked good. They should have lost to the Jets. They did lose last week. So I am really concerned about Lacy for the season. However, this week at 5,600, I mean, you got to play him, right? You got to use him.
You've got to. I don't think you're going to get at this point in the season, I don't see a better matchup coming up just yet. You've got to play him this week. And I can see where your worry about the Packers offense comes about. You know, I saw a couple clips where Rodgers just didn't look right. You know, he was steps off with his receivers, and that's not normal. It's something that they're going to fix, though. This happens almost every year to them, where they go through a period of not being able to produce. Other than 2011, which was like their record-setting offensive year, they go through a small lull where they can't really produce, and I think that's just what we're seeing right now. Again, you know, they had right tackle. Their right tackle was Derek Sherrod, who's been out of the game for almost 2 years after breaking his leg in 2011, you know, because Bulaga got injured. So
Right.
There's a brand new rookie center. I mean, there's a lot of question marks still up there. David Bakhtiari is okay, but he's still only a second-year left tackle. Their tight end is a big question mark as well. So you're right. There's a lot of.
We're talking about Rodgers preseason, the tight end Rodgers, not Aaron Rodgers, and he hasn't really panned out. Quarles hasn't really done anything to write home about. So, I mean, there's a lot of question marks as far as this team goes on the offensive line and at some key positions in the offense as well. And key positions, tight end and line, which affect Lacy, you know, who's the player we're talking about. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, there's question marks. And the Packers tight end situation, we'll leave it at this. Brandon Bostic, keep that name in mind because you'll see, mark it here, you will see somebody starting him by the end of the year. He was a training camp standout and then got injured, hasn't really come back 100% yet. He's looking okay, though. He's played the past couple weeks on special teams. Watch him put it together by the end of the year. Remember that name, Brandon Bostic. But we're getting into tight ends. Let's stick with running backs. Moving on to our next value pick, we're looking at Alfred Morris, running back for the Redskins, going up against the G-Men this week. 5,500 in DraftKings, 7,600 in FanDuel. So I think he's in the same position as Eddie Lacy, where he's pretty darn cheap on DraftKings. I mean, Morris produces. So tell me, Pete, do you think they're really of the same value here? Do you think Morris can put up as much as Lacy?
Not more. I mean, look, again, we just voiced all our concerns about Lacy. We're advocating Lacy as a value play. We're not advocating him as a sure bet. We're not advocating him as somebody who you can put in your lineup and really feel great about. We like his price. Morris, on the other hand, is getting a ton of touches. He's getting 20-plus touches the past 2 weeks, 20-plus carries the past few weeks. He's Giants are not exactly to be feared as far as their defense. He's got a nice matchup on Thursday night. So, yeah, I like Morris. My only real concern with Morris has been the fact that he doesn't catch passes. 0 receptions on the season. 0. And this is a .5 PPR format. But as far as a guy who's getting the load, who's getting the workload, yeah, sure, it's a good price.
I just think the one concerning thing about Morris to play in daily leagues is he hasn't gone over 100 yards yet this year. The one big week he had, he was touchdown dependent. He had the 2 touchdowns. And I know he gets all those carries, but like you said, he doesn't catch any passes, so there's no extra points to be had there. So if he's kept under 100 yards and a touchdown, he's still going to have 25 carries, but you're still stuck with 77 to 90 yards and no extra points.
You like the opportunity he's getting, and I think he will be probably the goal line back. But I agree with you. Morris is not much upside. The opportunity is there. He's going to get you points, but the upside, especially because of the lack of catching passes in a half-point PPR format, it's just not there.
So he's one of those plays that we're looking for, who's a higher floor but lower ceiling play, who you're thinking of playing in like a 50-50 league where you really all you want to do is secure points in order to secure your payback, right? It's not like a boom or bust play in these these massive tournaments.
Right.
Yeah,
like if you're playing in a tournament, you're not using Morris. Yep, that's exactly right. If you're playing in a tournament, Morris should not be used. But if you're playing in a 50-50 or one of those 1 for 3 or something like that, that's where you want to use a guy like Morris, I think.
Yeah, I'd rather play Roy Hildu in DraftKings than Morris, even though he has a way lower floor. I'd rather take a chance that Hildu catches five balls and gets in the end zone rather than hope that Morris goes over 100 yards in a score.
Yeah, I agree with that logic.
Okay. Moving on to our next running back value pick, Doug Martin, coming back healthy. We saw Rainey pretty much implode this past week. Doug Martin coming back. We don't know if I'm not going to say I'm convinced he's 100% healthy. I'm going to say he's healthy enough to play. He's looking at 5,500 in DraftKings, still 7,000 in FanDuel, going up against Pittsburgh. Alex, what do you like about Doug Martin this week? I think we voiced our concerns earlier about Mike Glennon. Do you really think Martin is a good play this week, or do you think he's another one of those boomer bust guys?
For this week, I think he's a boomer bust guy, but for the duration of the rest of the season, his outlook is better because I think he got that extra week to get healthy. Where if they had played Sunday last week instead of the Thursday night game, last week if they had played Sunday, he probably would have been in the lineup because I think he was just about there, but they were kind of iffy on the turf situation and a short week. So he got an extra week to get healthy. He's a guy that can catch balls out of the backfield. And also with Bobby Rainey just did not look very good against the Falcons. I know that whole team looked really bad, but he put the ball on the ground twice, and that's something that Lovie Smith isn't really going to be okay with. And as long as Martin holds onto the ball, he's going to get his opportunities because he is the most talented runner in that backfield.
Agreed. And like I said, I really think Tedford coming in to call plays again, he's going to be able to, or he's going to be more apt to call different plays that'll open up the field and get those, those extra defenders out of the box. I think it's going to allow Martin to be able to scamper a little bit more than he has been in the past.
Yeah, I was going to say, who needs to get healthy? Offensive coordinator Jeff Tedford for the Bucs.
Yeah.
I mean, they have looked bad, and last week was the exclamation point on that bad. That game against Atlanta was just atrocious.
Yep. And reports are coming out that he's coming back this week, so I guess we'll see. But for now, we'll move on to our next running back, Donald Brown. We touched on him a little bit earlier when we were talking about Phillip Rivers. They're down Ryan Matthews, they're down Danny Woodhead, so now Donald Brown is the go-to guy there. They're probably going to pick somebody up off the street, but as we saw this past week, they won't hesitate to give Donald Brown, even when he's not producing, right? He had, a 30 carry game for 60 yards. It's not pretty, but against Jacksonville this week, that's a pretty matchup, right? We're looking at 5,400 on DraftKings, 6,300 on FanDuel. So I think we like him in both leagues this week. Alex, are you all in on Donald Brown?
Yeah, I think so, because that's a pretty low price for a guy that's going to get 25 carries and also catch the ball out of the backfield. I think that's the other important thing, where if you were kind of between Donald Brown and Alfred Morris, I'd rather go with Brown because he's going to catch balls. Also, I see San Diego getting off to a big lead like we talked about earlier, and that means that Donald Brown's going to get a lot of touches. He could be running out the clock at the end of the game and wind up with an extra 50 yards just running out the clock. I see him getting in the end zone at least once, and they're going to shorten that game, and shortening that game means giving Donald Brown the ball. So he's going to have his work cut out for him this week, and he's going to do some pretty good things for daily leagues.
Yeah, I don't think he's a poor play at all. Sorry, Pete, you had something to say?
Oh no, I was just gonna say, Buffalo's actually, I think, kind of a surprise team. Their defense is a little underrated, and I think that Jacksonville is not. So I think this is a good matchup, a great matchup, as a matter of fact. And who else have they got? Brown is going to get all of the work. Whether they're up killing the clock, whether they want to run the ball to control the game early, Brown is getting all the work. This is the perfect mesh of opportunity and matchup. So I think that Brown is what's his price again? Could you remind me? Sorry.
5,400 on DraftKings and 63 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I mean, this is like bordering like must-play territory. He's going to get all the work. He's going to catch the passes with Woodhead out, and the matchup is just amazing. So,
yeah,
what more could you ask for?
I think you've got to go with him this week if you're, especially, I say it all the time, if you've gone big at other positions and you're looking for someone who's definitely going to get you points at a cheap price, he's a guy you're looking at.
Right.
Moving on to someone, we spoke about this next guy last
with both
week.
Upside and safety. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yes, exactly. So he's high ceiling, high floor as well for Donald Brown. Exactly. Very good point, Pete. Next guy we're talking about, we touched on last week on the Saints backfield. We talked about both Kyrie Robinson and Pierre Thomas. And as we saw, Pierre Thomas got into the end zone, but Kyrie Robinson took most of the workload running the ball. Kyrie Robinson this week, sitting at only 4,800 in DraftKings, 4,900 in FanDuel, going up against the Dallas defense that's been okay but inconsistent, I'll call it. What do we think this week, Pete, about Kyrie Robinson? He's not going to catch you those passes, like Pierre Thomas will, but he will get you those rushing yards.
Yeah, 18 rushes last week. Good chance to find the end zone, just like last week. Could have gotten in. My issue with the Saints is it's so inconsistent, the usage of the players. You never know from one week to the next who's going to get the looks, who's going to get the targets. And that's just how their offense works. They spread it around, and it's tough to tell. I think Robinson is a good value. I honestly don't know if he's going to find his way onto any of my lineups, though. Dallas is weak everywhere, and they can exploit those matches, whether in the short passing game with Pierre Thomas or Colston and Graham on the outside. So I don't know. I have a hard time using Thomas. I think there's other value players I'd rather throw in there at running back, especially a guy like Donald Brown, who we just talked about. But I certainly understand the argument for him. He's getting the work.
Yeah, exactly, right? He's getting those carries like we've been saying.
And he's looked good.
But he's not necessarily, I wouldn't really call him a high floor, though, because there is still that split,
right.
That shared value in the backfield there. So he's maybe a medium floor.
See, this is kind of what I was talking about. Like, this is why he's not going to be in any of my lineups. He's got kind of a low floor, and he's got kind of a low ceiling because he's not going to catch a ton of passes. You know, it's kind of like Alex's point on Alfred Morris. You're banking on rushing yards and a score.
And the thing there is, they gave the goal line touches to Pierre Thomas last week. So can you even count on, like, what's your real expectation for him even scoring?
Right, exactly. That's exactly my point. You know, so he's kind of a guy like Alex was saying with Alfred Morris. You know, you're hoping he finds the end zone, and you're hoping for rushing yards, and is that really the guy you want to be playing in a half-point or full-point PPR league? I think no. You know, I like the value. It's a reasonable play. It's a name that a lot of people will forget about and probably not use, but you're not going to find him on any of my lineups for exactly these reasons.
Right. So we will leave him in the dust then. We're going to move on to a guy whose name I love.
Leaving him in the dust.
But I
we'll
don't.
leave him in the dust like he does many defenders. There you go.
No, Kurt would love that.
Yes.
But unfortunately, Kurt is not with us right here. Hopefully he hears us on the podcast when it's posted tomorrow, and gives us a shout out from the Knuckleheads Twitter account. But we'll move on to a guy whose name I love, but he's quite perplexing to me in this play. Lorenzo Taliaferro, Ravens running back. They're going up against Carolina this week. It's a tough play against Carolina to begin with, right? Even with Greg Hardy out, their defensive line is still pretty good, as we saw in their game against Detroit. He's getting the majority. He got the majority of these carries this week because Bernard Pierce is out. Bernard Pierce, assuming he's out Sunday, Taliaferro will still get the majority of carries. Justin Forsett may, step in here and there, but he's sitting at 4,600 on FanDuel, on DraftKings, 5,300 on FanDuel. I really think his price is just too high. I think he's in the same boat as Kyrie Robinson, where you're kind of sitting there and you don't know what he can really do. His ceiling seems a bit low for me because I haven't seen him catch passes out of the backfield and be shifty. Alex, are you with me on that, or you think Lorenzo Taliaferro is a legit play this week?
I'm with you in the sense that Bernard Pierce might have said multiple times that when Bernard Pierce is healthy, he's still the guy there. However, I see him being on a pretty short leash, and in time, Taliaferro is going to wind up taking over the full-time starting gig for this week. That's too big of a chance to take unless for sure that Bernard Pierce is out. Bernard Pierce is out. I kind of actually really like Taliaferro this week. Carolina's defense got shredded by Pittsburgh. I know their running game is much better, but they still got shredded. Especially because, Thomas Davis is also out for the Panthers, and that's a big part of their defensive front and rushing. They got shredded. So he's a sneaky play. I know it's a little expensive for a guy that has only had one good week in the NFL ever, but he's got some sneaky value coming up against a defense that looks a little bit downgraded than they usually are.
Yeah, see, Mark, I actually want to disagree with you if that's all right. I think he's very different from Kyrie Robinson. Robinson is the guy where we just talked about limited upside and low floor. I think Taliaferro is the opposite. He's got a very high upside, still a low floor, very low floor, especially if Pierce plays. Now, if Pierce is out, that changes things significantly.
Right.
And he is dealing with some injury issues. But Taliaferro, I think this is a guy who has very high upside. The Panthers just got wrecked. I don't know if you can fix that in 1 week. They're a strong defense. They're a good defense. We know this, but something is up. Something is wrong. Not only that, if Taliaferro is getting all of the touches and catching some balls for you, I like it at 5,300 in FanDuel. Quite a bit. So I think he's a different case than Robinson, but for those reasons.
No, you make very good points. I mean, you raise valid points, but he's still, for me personally, I'm not going to take that risk, but I could see somebody who's,
right.
Again,
he's absolutely
looking at that tournament play. He's someone who, if you're trying to get that big bang and you're looking for players that other folks aren't going to play, right? And I think Taliaferro fits right into there because I think the majority of people are not going to own him. And if he does go off and you play him, obviously, you're going to gain those points that other people have probably lost by playing someone who, for example, in this past week, let's say, Eddie Lacy, right? Maybe he was played in 10% of teams, but he got them, very, very few points. So if you play Taliaferro and he goes off, you're already above those folks who played Lacy. You know what I mean? You get my kind of train of thought there. He's, again, that boomer bust play that we're talking about who
Risk
you really
with
have to play him. Yeah. High risk, but could be high reward if he runs anything like Le'Veon Bell did against Carolina this past week.
Right. Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head there. Like we talked about, Morris is the guy you want in 50-50. Taliaferro is the type of player you look for in the big tournament types.
Yeah. So we touched on a couple of players where I think DraftKings kind of overcorrects, like Eddie Lacy, and I think this guy fits right into that mold. Frank Gore going up against the Eagles this week. He's at 4,500 in DraftKings, 7,200 in FanDuel. So again, I think DraftKings really overcorrected because he wasn't used a lot last week. And I read a report today that the offensive coordinator of the 49ers came out and said, we underutilized him in the first half because we expected to get out to a lead and then be able to save him for the second half. And that's obviously not what happened. Looking at this matchup against the Eagles, I feel like he's right in that Eddie Lacy wheelhouse. I mean, $4,500. Pete, am I crazy here?
No, you're absolutely right. Okay, first of all, can we just say that has to be one of the dumbest strategies ever. We think we're going to beat this team, which is leading our division. Like, they gave them no respect. I guess it's the Drew Stanton factor. What is going on? Look, this is the NFL. You play the game. Get your guys in there. Get the lead. You want to run out the clock? You want to save the guy for the second half? How about this, 49ers? Get the lead first.
I really wish I had the Herm Edwards drop there. You play to win the game.
Play to win the game. Well, you know what you got to do to win the game? You got to have a lead. You can't win the game until you're out front. Anyway, that's just dumb. They got to use Gore more. They know it. They have started the season very poorly, and they really need to get Gore going. They need to get that whole team going. I like Gore a lot this week. The matchup is nice. The matchup is very nice. I like Gore. I think he's going to be great. I don't know if I like him at 7,200, but in DraftKings, love Gore. Love Gore a lot this week in DraftKings. I think, you're using him. The Niners know they got to get him going. The Niners hopefully realize what a ridiculous plan that was last week. I think I'm using him in DraftKings. The matchup is right. Yeah, play him.
And in talking about him, we have to talk about the 49ers running back that actually scored this week, Carlos Hyde. 3,200 in DraftKings, 6,000 in FanDuel. So again, DraftKings with the more significant value. Alex, talk to me about Hyde. Do you think he can he get into the end zone? Can he eclipse Gore? I mean, what are we looking at here in terms of Gore versus Hyde value?
I think both of these guys are a good value this week. Obviously, what Pete was saying about Gore, they need to get him the football, but they also need to get the ball in Carlos Hyde this week and in weeks prior. This team is a team that has been built on their rushing attack for the past few years. They ran the ball the second most amount of times in football last year, which is why people thought at the beginning of the year both Gore and Hyde were going to have RB2 flex value while they're on the field together. So they got to get back to what they were best at, which is running the football and not trying to rely on Kaepernick throwing it as much. And when they start doing that, they're going to start winning more games, and it's going to be more fantasy points for both Gore and Hyde. And at Hyde's price of $3.2K on DraftKings, for him to probably get in the end zone like he always does, it's a good play this week.
I like it. I mean, it's again, I think for Hyde, I'd like Gore more than Hyde. But if you're, again, strapped for cash, I mean, there's a $1,300 difference. So if you're strapped for that cash, Hyde isn't a bad play. Again, that matchup against the Eagles, you're expecting a lot of rushing yards for the Niners. You're expecting a lot of points overall in that game. So either one's not a terrible play this week.
Yeah, and the other thing to watch on Philly's defense, I have him in IDP league. Michael Kendricks is still out. If he's out, that is a lot of running room for running backs for the 49ers to play against the Eagles, but it's something that I would be worried about if Kendricks is back in.
Yes, very good point.
One last thing to consider, you said Gore did not get a lot of work last week and he was dropped. Hyde did find the touchdown, got even less work.
Yeah, they didn't run the ball at all last week. It didn't make any sense.
Right.
So our next running back we're hoping to find some value for you guys is Matt Asiata. He's no AP, we always say that, but going up against Atlanta, I still don't think, I'm not convinced, I know Alex is, but I'm not convinced about Atlanta's defense really being all that good. They were really good against the Bucs, but that's not saying much. They performed pretty well against New Orleans, but again, that was at home. Asiata's going for 4,500 in DraftKings, 6,300 in FanDuel. So we see some value for, who's a back who's going to catch balls out of the backfield like we've seen. He can take something to the house out of the backfield. He can get you, probably 12 to 16 carries at least as well. Pete, are you on the Asiata bandwagon yet, or do you, especially against Atlanta, or do you think he's really just kind of a trick play this week?
No, I actually think he's a fairly good play. This is another guy who's getting all the work. He does catch passes, which is useful in the PPR format. And also, I'm with you. I'm not sold on Atlanta suddenly being, world eaters on defense. I really don't think they are. I think this was just a case of a bad Bucs team without their offensive coordinator on Thursday night and things going poorly. So I like Asiata. I think he's a very reasonable play. I'm actually using him in regular fantasy as well.
Beautiful. Our last running back of the night will go to Alex. It'll be Bishop Sankey. He's going for 4,100 in DraftKings, 5,700 in FanDuel. Alex, tell me, am I crazy here? Because I still don't see value out of this guy. He hasn't shown me anything really, but convince me. Tell me why I should play Sankey this week.
I think this is more along the lines of one of those major tournament-style boomer bust plays. Sankey hasn't really had the majority of the carries in this backfield yet, but Sean Green really isn't running the ball effectively. McCluster hasn't been there to do as much as they were hoping that he could do, and Bishop Sankey looked like the best running back in the backfield last week, going, I think it was 10 carries for 61 yards. Yeah, it was 10 for 61. Continued to say that he wants to go with the hot-handed running back, but on the other hand of it is that he's worried about Sankey's footwork, which could be an issue, and Wisenhunt is a pretty stubborn coach. So I think it's a big boomer bust play. If he gets hot, he's going to have a good day, but there's always the chance that he could just say, I don't want to play you anymore, and he's done for the day. He is the most talented runner in that backfield. It's just whether or not Wisenhunt will give him the chance to run with it.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to argue about talent there, because I think I agree with you there, but the reason why he didn't win the starting job out of preseason is because he just didn't show it, right? He couldn't put it together on the field. So until he has that breakout game, I'm staying away from him. But again, I'm more risk averse than probably the normal tournament player. So I agree with you though that playing him is the right play for a tournament player who's really looking to kind of have that boomer bust. And who knows? Say Sean Green goes down, Sankey comes in, takes a screen pass to the house. I mean, there's not going to be more than a handful of people playing Sankey anyway. So I can see your point there for a tournament play, absolutely. But that was it. That's our list of running backs. Unless we have a late breaking person coming in from Pete.
Nope. Nope, I was late to the show. You guys already talked about the guys I wanted to. I was busy taping Jamal Charles' ankle, It's a tough business.
Yeah, I mean, you do what you can, right?
Yeah, late at night.
Did you braid his hair as well?
Unfortunately, I do not have a degree in that, so.
All right, so we'll briefly recap here. We've got Ahmad Bradshaw, Eddie Lacy, Alfred Morris, Doug Martin, Donald Brown, Kyrie Robinson, Lorenzo Taliaferro, Frank Gore, Matt Asiata, Bishop Sankey, and Carlos Hyde. If you're looking for value out there, especially in DraftKings this week, look for those overcorrections on a lot of these guys. FanDuel.
I say it's weird that out of that entirely long list, the name I like best is Donald Brown. How strange is that?
I bet you did not think you were going to say that 3 weeks ago.
I did not. You could have told me I was going to say that, and I would have laughed in your face.
Exactly. But instead, you can laugh in my face for other reasons. But we'll move on from that, and we'll say good
After
night.
my Bears beat your Packers, you mean? Would that be another reason?
I think we'll save that discussion for Thursday, and we'll see who we value on QB at QB on Thursday. So for Pete, for Alex, follow us on Twitter. Hit us up on Twitter and fantasyknuckleheads.com. Thank you guys very much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.